Good morning. Good morning. We're going to start the meeting. There are only 3 commissioners here at this moment. We are expecting a couple more who may or may not make it. Today will be discussion only. We don't have a quorum, but so many of you have come to hear or to talk about what's going on. One more. We need one more after. Barbara, yay.
She's the star as far as I'm concerned.
I know.
I thought it'd be better to go to one downstairs with all those refreshments.
Oh, is that what you did?
Sorry, not Pima County.
Okay, do we have a flag? Yes, we do. I'm going to ask you all to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You going to take roll call? Me to do roll call? Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I think
You do? I will do roll call. Okay, I'm going to do roll call, and I'm going to do it this way because I want to make sure I remember everybody's name. Commissioner Atkins, Commissioner Kirchen, Commissioner Tellman.
Here.
Commissioner Bickle, Commissioner Caswell,
Here.
Commissioner DeLarge, Commissioner Mace, Commissioner Berezny,
Present.
I'm here, Commissioner Helen, Tony Helen. Our chairman is not here today, but we're happy to see all of you here. We're going to do a call to the public, ask everyone to please be, we cannot comment on your comments at all. You understand that? And you will have 3 minutes, going to be timed at 3 minutes, but you're welcome to speak. No. Okay. And if you have a very soft voice, there is a microphone right up at this front desk across from us there that you are welcome to use. So, do we have anyone who wants to speak today?
Madam Vice Chair, he did ask that we all speak into the microphone, even if they don't have a soft voice, for the recording.
Okay. Then you all heard that. You're going to use one of the microphones. There's one here and one here.
And pass it around.
Okay, good idea. Let's start right here with the front table.
Hi, my name is Susan Kelly. Does this work? Okay. I have a loud voice, so I think it's fine. I just wanted to mention that, one of the key tenets of election integrity is to have ethics and to have integrity. I trust in this board. I think that's the whole reason we're here today, to be very ethical and to have high moral standard. I do have some concerns about Runbeck. They have been in the news recently in regards to their contract with Maricopa County, because they do a lot more for Maricopa County than they do for Pima County. I reviewed the contract that Pima County has with Runbeck, and it's very straightforward. I don't have any concerns there, but I'm concerned about them from an integrity perspective and from an ethical perspective. I used to work for a large company here in town, and we had annual ethics training. I would question whether Runbeck does. I really would appreciate if we could make sure we build on the established relationship that Pima County has with Runbeck as a company. And one of those things we need to do is make sure that they're as transparent as we would want our elected officials to be. Transparency in this day and age with our government is hard to find. So I really would like Pima County to be above board and try to be as transparent about how our election is being run as humanly possible. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, yes.
My name is Lana. Can you hear me? Lana O'Brien? Yes. So in speaking about run back, one of the things that we've been made aware of is that no observers are allowed at the run back facility because it's a private facility and they haven't provided authorization. This is something that needs to change. If they're printing our ballots, we need to have some oversight of that to ensure that we can make sure that they're doing things properly there and we have oversight of it. And I want to make that the EIC priority to ensure that that happens. Thank you.
My name is Tim Locks. My big concern is Runbeck. Two things. There is a relationship between Ben Toma and the CEO of Runbeck, and that is a major concern. There have been many, many different allegations regarding that relationship and why Runbeck is doing what they're doing. Chain of custody issues between MTech and Runbeck also a problem, especially in 2020. There's paperwork that was not signed showing receipt on both ends. But mainly, I wonder why this commission exists. Because the Board of Supervisors meeting, the tyrannical manner in which they run things, they didn't even give the EIC an opportunity to review the Runbeck contract. It just pops up on the agenda, boom, they slam it right through, and we have no clue what really it involves. And so, why do you guys exist? Because they're not going to listen to you anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Sharon. Is this working? Yeah. I'm Sharon Fickus. I'm a legal resident, Pima County. A general comment I have is that the EIC website is not currently providing all the agendas and the minutes. I'd like that corrected. I have made a call in to the clerk and asked for that. I haven't had a response. I have a question regarding the agenda item 4. The meeting summary, the draft minutes, talks about the agenda item 5, where County Attorney Dan Jerkowitz, he does a reference to ARS 38-43101, and he talks about mainly the law review of what's going on for the ARS. But there's, on the agenda for that item, there's no mention of emergency meetings in the reference that he provided. So I'm wondering, what is the source for the denial of advisory committees for an emergency meeting? It's been denied, but there's no source for where that denial came from. I'd like to find that out. On item 5 of this agenda, A and F, Runbeck Election Services, I also have questions and concerns about it. And yes, the Board of Supervisors did approve that 3-1 on June 20. I agree that. And no observers to this private company service scanning and sorting are on part of that contract. As an advisory committee to the Board of Supervisors, I'd like you to consider making a specific comment to the Board of Supervisors that observers for Runbeck should be included for all their services and their activity involving Pima County, the scanning, the tabulating, and observers for chain of custody. When moving Pima County ballots from any location to their private location and their delivery results. Observer activity will help provide transparency to the community, and for the Runbeck services, that'll help and show support to the voters for trust in the Pima County election process. Now, this request may not be acceptable to the current Board of Supervisors, but the Runbeck contract has 4 option years, or 3 option years, and a future Board of Supervisors group may be more interested in canceling these options or canceling Runbeck. If you will make the changes that you're interested in this, and the EIC has made these important suggestions, I would strongly suggest that this EIC at least makes that suggestion. Item 5G, the additional vote centers and the equipment and related costs. These vote centers were initially proposed to be more efficient for the voters, more cost savings. It's not happening. Pima County is now approaching the same number of vote centers as we had as precincts. So where's the effect? It's not happening. Get rid of the vote centers, go back to precincts, and let's stop the nonsense. Thank you.
I got a question about the sorry. Yeah, in Maricopa County, the Cary Lake hearing, the recent hearing, it came out, there was 150 Valenzuela people stated that there was 155 people that were performing signature verification, but only 24 of the 155 were subject to observers. So only 24 temporary employees were under the scrutiny of observers. The other, 131 or whatever, 132 were in offices at one of the 3 locations, and they were not allowed. The observers were not allowed in those locations. And that was all under oath, and the government lawyers strongly objected several times due to relevance, which I thought was a little far out because it's totally irrelevant to Cary Lake's case. And simple question, are we doing the same thing here in Pima or in the city elections? Do we have 100 plus people in offices, closed doors, with no observers? Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair, can we get the gentleman's name, please? The gentleman.
No, who just spoke, the gentleman who just spoke.
Don Hales, and I am
You weren't-
an observer at the...
Enough when you said your name.
Sorry, Don Hales, and I am an observer at the signature verification and other places.
Don Gales, did you say?
No, Hales, Hayles, Hales. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners, and everyone else who's joining. My name is Peter Norquist. I apologize for being a little bit late today, and I was just informed that what I want to talk about has been a popular topic today, so forgive me if I'm repeating anything that anyone has already said, but I'll just launch into it. In the past, I've listed several vulnerabilities here in our elections process. And I want to say that although potential problems still exist on the election side, I'm currently most concerned with what happens upstream between Runbeck and the recorder's office. Since the county recently renewed their contract with Runbeck, and since it's on today's agenda, I wanted to address some issues with them. There were concerns raised in the last election that Runbeck took ballots without the chain of custody documents required by Arizona law, and that they, as an outside contractor, counted the ballots in violation of Arizona law, and that the number of ballots they counted does not equal the number of votes reported. They are now denying the Arizona legislature the documentation that they are legally required to give us, stating that chain of custody documents and security footage are not public records since they are not a, quote, public body. Question, does Runbeck meet
Can you wait
Arizona's...
could you wait just a minute
Sure.
while we, yeah. There
Yes.
we go, thank you.
No, I'm happy to do so. Can you hear me okay, otherwise?
I can, yes.
Okay. So my first question is, does Runbeck meet Arizona State Law ARS 16442B and the associated HAVA 2002 requirements? Arizona has codified this statute into state law, and it's mandatory for any machines and devices used in elections in this state. Although Runbeck is a private company, they would have to follow state law and provide certificates of accreditation by a testing laboratory sanctioned by the EAC. Remember that there is still an outstanding question about which, if any, of the testing labs are legally accredited at present. Next question. Does Runbeck hold logic and accuracy testing, and are there observers? Ballot duplication done on computers with internet access are not allowed per state laws. The Secretary of State should provide proof that Runbeck's machines and devices, including programs such as ballot adjudication and signature verification programs...
Your time is up, sir.
Okay, and software have been tested for use in the state per that law. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Is there someone with a microphone? I can't see behind back there.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Stiesel, Stuessel. Is it possible for the recorder's office and elections department to put out a flow diagram of how Runback is used to support Pima County elections. I do understand that it is different than Maricopa County use, so I think it would be really helpful for everybody here in the room today, as well as citizens of Pima County, to understand how Runback is integrated into the election process. Example of creating our ballots, and where does their process begin and where does it end? That's my request, is to please publish that on your EIC website.
Elizabeth Thompson. I'm a Pima County resident. And I'm also a judge. I was at the provisional table in the last 2 elections, and I didn't see the chain of custody being done correctly at the site where I was. The training that we received was terrible. It was very generalized, and really we didn't have information in the handbook that addressed a lot of the issues. Our inspector had never been an inspector before and didn't know what she was doing. And because the machines broke down at 7:15 in the morning and didn't get started again until 10:30, the provisional table was very backlogged by the time we got the machines going. Part of the reason for that is the alternate computer that we had been given was missing 3 parts. And so I would recommend or suggest or demand that before the elections take place, all of the equipment needs to be inventoried so that when something does break down or isn't working correctly, there will be a replacement immediately. It took 3.5 hours for this to get taken care of after 3 IT people had looked at it. And it was something so simple. It was just absolutely asinine. Also, the chain of custody, because the provisional table was so backlogged in our area at both of the precincts or both of the locations, we had people that were disenfranchised in that area. And also, the people were putting things away at 7 o'clock, but I had a backlog of 45 minutes later. I don't know what happened to the ballots. Nobody knew what happened to them. They were just put wherever they could put them because the inspector wasn't overseeing the situation. And I don't know how many times this happened throughout Arizona, but in the precinct or the area where I was, it was just terrible. And we didn't get home till 10:30. And I know that because of the chain of custody, one person had to stay until 2 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know what is going on in Arizona, but this needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others who would like to speak? We have a follow-up question, do we?
Yeah, just one quick point was, I'm just curious, does the reporter's office actively go out and knock on doors and check, aggressively check the voter rolls? Because there's some arguments along those lines about the voter rolls, and anyway, that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to move on, and we have some experts here today who are going to discuss some of the issues as you see on the agenda. So some of your questions may be answered at that point. Next on the agenda is the approval of the June, we call 18th meeting minutes or summaries, as we call them.
We can't approve them without a quorum.
That's true, we can't do business without a quorum. And it looks like we are it today, the four of us. So the commission is 9 members, so we need a majority to be able to conduct business. So we won't be voting or conducting any business, but we will have the discussions as listed on here. I'm going to move the first discussion down a couple of slots and ask Commissioner Tellman to get into her issues, which is voter registration lists. You have 3 of them on there. You want to talk about the voter registration list maintenance?
I didn't want to talk about them. I wanted Ms. Cazares-Kelly to enlighten us. And I think that fits in with the run-back issue. I think they both, all 3 can take it by here.
So you all know that the Director of Elections is here. Director Hargrove is here for those issues, and also Madam Recorder. Gabrielle Cazares-Kelly is here, and so you've got your experts here, and her Chief Deputy also, Hillary Heiser. So I'll be quiet and let them do what they need to do.
Sure things. We good? Okay. So list maintenance happens every single day within our office. We had previously submitted a item that was included, I believe, in your packets that had the breakdown of list maintenance tasks. I didn't bring copies for everyone. I apologize for that. So we are continuously doing that. Number one, from voter registration forms that we receive in paper form, or through Arizona Motor Vehicle Department. We process any returned mail, anything that we receive back. It is now law that if anyone receives information for a voter, that they're supposed to send it back, and that helps us maintain those voter rolls. What'll happen is the National Voter Registration Act process will begin. We send out letters, so anytime we have something that's returned to us, we immediately send out a letter. The voter can then update. After 35 days, if there is no response, the voter is moved to inactive status and no further mail is sent to that voter. That inactive status can be changed simply by the voter contacting our office and letting us know what their new address is. After 2 federal election cycles with no response, the voter is canceled. And so that is all following ARS 16-166, 165. For deaths, Arizona, the Secretary of State's office provides monthly Department of Health Services lists of people who died in Arizona. The staff checks for a good match. We use ERIC data, which is a national electronic registration information center database, which provides a monthly Social Security Administration death list. We check again for good matches there. Staff reviews all Pima recorded documents for death certificates and checks against the voter file monthly. Staff even reviews obituaries from local publications online and printed. And if there's a voter who calls reporting their loved one's death, we can utilize their obituary if they send it directly to us. If someone simply says, oh, my husband passed away, or something like that, we do require a letter or the death certificate or a paid obituary in order to do that. And of course, that's a protection for the voter. I know in the past there have been people who've said, well, we got a divorce, so they're dead to me. That doesn't count.
Wow.
We use The Avid system automatically checks our work. The Avid system, recently I was on a call with the other recorders and elections directors, I believe, and we were trying to make sure that we all had the same acronym, that it was Arizona Voter Information Database, and actually it's not. The A stands for Access Voter Information Database, which all the state of Arizona, all 15 counties currently use this system. We check for duplicate matches with other counties. Felony convictions where the courts have notified the Arizona Secretary of State will come through there, so there'll be an automatic cancellation there. They would match through the motor vehicle division. We are checking for F-type licenses indicating it's not a citizen, that obviously, and then matching number provided or identify a match already in the motor vehicle system when the driver's license is not provided. And we also do the SAVE database, which is federal, which is the systemic alien verification for entitlement. So we're checking when necessary for citizenship status. And while we can use the SAVE database to verify citizenship status for initial registration, it's not used for list maintenance purposes. So we can't just, let's run everybody through SAVE. Like, we have to have a reason for doing that. And so that's used when a voter just puts their alien registration number on the form and we don't see the actual certificate or naturalization. But when we are present at naturalization ceremonies, our staff is there to actually view the actual certificate and make sure that the numbers are recorded correctly. Periodically, staff runs reports to check for anomalies in the records. So we check for duplicate Arizona driver's licenses, duplicate checks for the first name, social security number, or date of birth, and then records with odd telephone numbers, and then also voters over the age of 100. We typically will give them a call, and then we also sometimes send them a birthday card. We also participate in the national change of address process. Our vendor runs the report from the United States Postal Service. This is not federally mandated, but it's permitted and it's helpful, and can be used as the first notice under the National Voter Registration Act. And then letters are generated based on the report, and we will send that out. We will run that report before any large mailing. So we're about to come up to the 90-day forward. Not about to. Everything feels like it's in fast forward. We're preparing to send out 90-day notices for all voters who are signed up for the active early voting list, to let them know of the upcoming election and when they should expect to receive their ballots, and that way they can make any changes prior to that. So we run that report prior to that. And then we've been doing that much more frequently also. And then we get cancellations or notices that voters have moved out of the jurisdiction, out of the state of Arizona, through the Arizona Secretary of State's office or through the Eric Cross State Mover Report. And so, again, this is a not an exhaustive list of list maintenance that we do, but we do make every effort to make sure that our data is clean. We rely heavily on the public to inform us if they are receiving mail at their residence that they shouldn't be receiving. We list on the envelope, please return if this voter doesn't live there. And that's how we are able to do that. We cannot simply have somebody removed verbally. without any type of paperwork. We're not able to remove people from any voter lists without their signatures or specific documentation. Everything has to have a specific reason, and all of those reasons that any changes are made are kept within our data system and are logged per operator who even performed that function. If there's any changes, all of that is documentable. Was that sufficient?
Very complete, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions from members?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner
Okay, thanks.
Bresney?
Commissioner Tillman, thanks for having this put on the agenda. Ms. Casares Kelly, close?
Very close.
Okay.
Casares Kelly. There you go.
Just want to make sure. Couple questions. Okay, so your returned election mail, which is list maintenance task A. I'm guilty of that. And I'll be honest, because back in July of 2020, under Efrain Rodriguez, I bought my home in 2018. In 2020, I got mail from the recorder's office, do you want to get an early ballot? So it was almost 2 years, well, a year and 10 months after that I had bought the home that I didn't, so I didn't return that back to the recorder's office. And I have it here with me unopened, and so I'm gonna be willing to turn it back to you today. Okay, so I just want to say I'm guilty of that. But in E, in task E, these are basically, to me, they look like just common sense kind of things that your office does.
We are strictly following ARS. So
Okay,
this
'cause I didn't
this is within state statute. This is within the elections procedures manual. Some of the things like checking obituaries, that is something that's just a good practice within our office.
Yeah.
Checking for soft matches and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But the majority of this, and we have the accompanying ARS listed
Right, and-
within the document that you
And
have
I
received.
appreciate that, because, Madam Vice Chair, because what we're doing in the ad hoc committee, the next step is, as we do our flow charts for the electoral process, I've asked the Elections Department to make sure we put in there what state statute or where in the election procedures manual that step comes from. So you've already done the work, and that is well appreciated, so where you can document that statute or that policy, it's great. So, but specifically on E, there is no reference to Title 16 dash whatever or the EPM. So that's why I say these look like kind of things that you said, addition to the procedures outlined, the recorder's office also created internal standard operating procedures to further assist to keep the voter rolls. So
I don't have the exact document. I have an older document that I was working off, and I didn't actually find the one that was submitted to the commission. So if you want to share.
Thank you, Commissioner Helen, and thank you, Commissioner Beresny. So for E, the periodically staff runs reports to check for anomalies and records. That's an internal process that we use for our voter registration database. So that is something that is a best practice that we've adopted in-house to be able to ensure that the voter registration database that we operate is running efficiently and effectively. So it's those consistent reports. Those are done on the back end to identify things. That's not mandated by any statute. That's not mandated by the EPM. That is a internal policy decision to ensure that our voter registration database is the most accurate information as possible.
right, okay, yeah, and that's what I thought. And so I really like this. So I've got a couple of these internal common sense, and these I call common sense kind of things that you're doing, and it's appreciated. Couple things. Back to the mail that I got 2 years after I purchased my home, okay? So this Madam Recorder. Can I call you Madam Recorder? It's a lot easier. I apologize. So I'll let everybody know, I used to have my soldiers call me Sergeant B because they had a problem pronouncing Berezny. But since you also do the title transfers and deed transfers in your office, is it transactable to look at those property transactions, put it against the voter registration database as a way to help clean up the voter rolls?
Absolutely not.
It's not.
No.
Why, and why?
We cannot make any changes to a voter's file without their express permission in the form of a signature. We cannot take it over the phone. We cannot make changes like that. And for anybody who owns property or multiple properties, you recognize that where your mail goes is extremely important. It is extremely important, and we cannot tell from, maybe you're somebody who's purchasing 15 different properties throughout Pima County, or maybe you are a landlord, or who knows what. There is no way for us to determine who would like their mail sent where. And that's why it's the voter's responsibility to make sure that they're updating their voter registration, their change of address forms. That's why we're constantly sending information for people to check where they're registered to vote. That information is available on our website. It literally says check your voter registration on our website, recorder.pima.gov. And we send those 90-day notices for that specific reason, because a lot of people forget to update
Sure.
their, and as far as move-in dates, who's living and occupying the property, there's absolutely no way for us to determine that. One thing that we do, however, is if we receive a death certificate that's related to a property, we will make sure that which goes to the recording side of the house, that the voter side of the house is sent that information.
Okay. And so the second thing was, during last year's election cycle, I had a couple phone calls from residents in Pima County. One was, and so we're talking about the cleaning up the voter registration database. A gentleman that lived in Green Valley said he received a voter registration card at his address for somebody who had never lived there before. And then also had somebody up in District 1 in the Marana-Oro Valley area. He received 3 voter registration data cards to his address. He had lived there for over 20 years. I verified that he had lived there over 20 years from the records from your website, from the recorder's site. And so, is there any kind of a provision where in the recorder's office, you can take these constituent or resident generated concerns, we'll call them concerns, because to me, if I'm receiving voter registration database or registration cards at my address for somebody that doesn't live there, I'm going to personally question it. And I would hope everybody would. So is there a process in your office where we take these calls in without having to go, like during the last Secretary of Attorney General, you could put in a voter fraud kind of a thing with registration? Is there anything in the office where we can assist the resident in alleviating this situation and helping you clean up the voter roll?
Thank you, Commissioner Berezny. Absolutely.
Okay.
They can mail it back to us. They can pop it right back in the mail with a little note that says, voter doesn't live here, and that will start the NVRA process that I shared at the very beginning of my explanation. They can, again, we're not able to make any changes to a voter's file without receiving their signature, so we're not able to do that. However, if they receive mail and it's returned, we'll send them a second piece. That second piece initiates that 35-day, and that will prevent them from receiving additional mail. When it is very close to the election, sometimes it's not possible to pull that ballot in time before they're mailed out. But again, if anybody ever receives a voter registration form, any type of official election mail, any mail from the recorder's office, or a ballot, they are simply to write voter does not live here, or whatever. Voter has passed away, voter has been moved, and they put that back in the mail, and when we receive that back, we then start that process to remove them from an inactive voter. And again, it won't necessarily cancel their voter registration, but if in two federal election cycles, if that voter does not respond and never shows up to vote, either early in person, never contacts our office, then their voter registration will be canceled per state statute. In addition to that, that is part of the process for us to verify a voter's residency, so where the voter lives. That's why we send you mail. We're doing that as part of our process to ensure that the voter does indeed live in that address. And of course, if that mail is returned to us, either because that property is vacant or because somebody within the household said, no, this person doesn't live here, again, we're gonna make an attempt to reach out to that person again, and then it'll start that process.
Okay. So, and months ago, I think that Ms. Heiser and I, we had a discussion a few months ago, and I think a lot of it was, you know, we have the motor vehicle divisions, you know, you sign up to vote that way. And a lot of these things, there may be, I don't know, maybe some nefarious stuff going on down there from, you know, from voter registration drives or something like that. And do we have any kind of training that or does the recorder's office have any kind of training we give to the advocacy groups on how to properly get somebody to register to vote?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Bresney. We do. We have an entire outreach program dedicated in our office to working with voter registration groups and providing them voter registration training. And that training is done, we're basically going out to the group saying, this is how you properly fill out the voter registration form. These are the things that we are looking for in our office to successfully process these voter registration forms. And these are the things that you should be looking out for when you're out there registering individuals to vote. It's very helpful for us to work with the groups and provide them that training because when they turn in voter registration forms, the forms are more accurately filled out, so it's easier for us to process them successfully. Any voter registration form that is returned to us that have any sort of issues, you know, we do set those aside and we do follow up on those particular forms. They don't automatically go in and get registered. So that's something to keep in mind. I was curious, Commissioner, you keep saying that you have some mail from us. I'd like to see what you have, just for...
I'll put a date on it. I got this in June, July 2020, which was 22 months after I bought my house.
And did you update your voter registration as soon as you bought your house?
Yeah, when I went back to Arizona in 2018, I registered to vote when I got my driver's license.
So in this...
That was the previous owner.
Right.
She moved to Alabama.
So in this instance, we still would have caught this. We would have just waited for the Secretary of State's cross-state mover report to put this particular voter into a NAVRA status. However, Commissioner, had you mailed it to us and popped it back in the mail,
I know.
we would have started that NAVRA process much sooner. So this is just a great example of, yes, any sort of mail that has the official election information on there, just put in return to sender. It comes right back to our offices, and we start the NAVRA process on that.
And thank you very much. And I have no problem being upfront and saying, put me on the bad kid list, on Santa's list this year, you know?
We will officially accept this as returned mail today and
Okay.
ensure that this voter is no
Thank you,
longer on
ma'am.
those.
We won't put that on the agenda or in the
What's that?
minutes. We won't put that in the minutes.
Do I have to stand in the corner?
Winter,
Yes.
just a quick question about winter visitors. What's the process? Say a person in Green Valley has gone back to Iowa for the summer and didn't notify you that their ballot had to be mailed. What's the process? What happens?
So first of all, that voter needs to have determined that they live within Arizona for 6 months plus a day, or the majority of their time is going to be here in Arizona. If that voter, we're not able to send actlets automatically out of state. They have to request that. And so if they, let's say that a person lives in Green Valley for the majority of the year, and for 5 months of the year, they live in Iowa, and we send the ballot to Green Valley, then it is the voter's responsibility to either call our office and request a ballot to, that first ballot to be canceled and a second ballot to be sent to Iowa, or to fill out that 90-day notice form that we send prior to. If they do that, we can send it to that first address right off the bat. That form is also available on our website, and it will be made available. We're required by state statute, it has to be between a certain time, and I don't have that date off the top of my head, but it's only allowable during that time period to make that request. But otherwise, we can do that. We can have a ballot mailed to a secondary location. We verify, if a voter calls in, we verify that voter's identity over the phone, and we can then send a ballot to a different location. We can actually do that for anywhere in the nation, and if a voter had a specific need for it to even go out of country, we're able to do that as well, depending on the needs of the voter. There may be additional paperwork, there will be additional paperwork if they're going out of country, but that is possible.
A little bit earlier than this, the voter is in Iowa. She thinks her mail is being forwarded, but election mail is not forwarded, so it comes back to you. What do you do with that coming back?
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman. Any election mail, when it's returned to our office, will automatically start the NAVRA process, which is the process of inactivating a voter. So we'll get that first process. The code will go in that we've returned mail. That will automatically inactivate the voter. Then 35 days later, we will send a second piece of mail. If that particular piece of mail comes back, then that inactivation code will continue to stay. And then after 2 federal election cycles, we will that canceled voter will then be taken off the roll. So if the voter is looking for their ballot, let me back up just a moment. If the voter is in Iowa and they have voter for Pima County, and this is the county that they have chosen to be a registered voter in only, then that voter would have to tell us that they would like their ballot to be forwarded. We would make a note of that in our system. Not forwarded, but mailed to us. We have it's not forwarded, but we have the mailing address and we have your residential address. So the voter would just simply say, I'm requesting a ballot to be temporarily mailed to this address, and we would have a temporary mailing address.
When you send out the 2 pieces of secondary mail, are they forwardable?
No. So the first piece of mail goes back to us, and that's the NAVRA. And then the second piece, the cancellation notice that we send out, that one is forwardable. So it's on the cancellation notice that if we get a response back from that, then we will take them off of an inactive status.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Caswell, I apologize for that.
Thank you. Madam
thank
Recorder wants to address something.
Thank you, Commissioner Caswell. I just want to clarify, inactive voter is a legally eligible voter whose address is simply not updated. So it is basically, we are putting it in somewhat in a state of suspension until we have contact from that voter with an updated address. So again, they're still legally eligible. They can show up on election day and that will reactivate them. They can show up at an early voting site. They can call us. If they call us, we're going to send them the form so they can update. We need to have a signature on file, but we're basically looking for a documented update, and that's all we're needing.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Caswell.
Thank you, Vice President. My question is in the regards to the voter rolls for the recorder side. Similar to Commissioner Beresny, I have a community that has a lot of new residences in it, and I was really surprised that a community that had never existed before, I had people that were receiving ballots for people that had never lived in this home because it never existed before, was never a valid address. And this was in 2020. I went and physically saw the mail, yellow ballot mail that came. I took it upon myself, was not politically motivated and working at the time, to research the name of this person, and I found that it was a recently graduated high school senior from one of our schools. She received multiple pieces of mail like this. She refused to mail concerned about because she knew they were ballots, and so she was concerned about mailing them back. So a definitely public service messaging about election mail is needed. Our people need to know that they can send that information back and be confident that that will be addressed. But being that they were ballots, that leads me to my next question. Where do the undeliverables go? Where do they reside when they have not been delivered or the mail that was not received within the time frame of an election? Where are those ballots held? Because that's kind of why they did not want to send that ballot back. So those are undeliverable mail. So let's just say the post office received that mail back and you didn't receive it in time for the election process, right? They have to be segregated somewhere than the other ballots you received. Where are undeliverables segregated in that process? And I do have another few questions too.
Thank you, Commissioner Caswell. Yes, we are working on providing public awareness for what to do if you receive a piece of election mail that does not belong to you and what the process is. You can bring that in person if you're feeling as if the mail, if you have concerns about the United States Postal Service, you're very welcome to hand deliver that back to us and surrender that mail. We also have the notice on the actual envelope itself that does give those instructions that you are to return it. And then your second question, what's that? Oh, the return service requested. So we do request those back from the U.S. Post Office. If they're undeliverable, we actually have our team pick it up from the post office, and we bring those back. We make sure that we're processing those. That's a priority for us to make sure that that gets listed in our service. We have an electronic return service requested, so we get the data, we get a data file with all of that information on all of those ballots that are getting returned. And then those ballots, they are kept segregated. They go to our downtown office rather than to our ballot processing facility. And there they'll be prepared for archive, and they're secured there.
Thank you. In regards to the voter registration advocacy groups, there is one group that has been given preference in the naturalization process, and that would be for the League of Women Voters. And I do know that there is other advocacy groups that have contacted me in the past and have also been present recently at the Board of Supervisors meeting requesting that they have opportunity as well. They're a nonpartisan effort. And so I was wondering if there was anything that was going to be addressed in that manner. I think certainly it benefits us to have multiple advocacy groups involved in that opportunity of naturalization service. It also would be good to rise up other people that would have the knowledge and be able to interact with the naturalization ceremonies, but also with that training as well. Is there some movement in that direction that we will see more diversity in the advocacy groups that will be entertained for that naturalization service?
Thank you, Commissioner Caswell. We do not allow branding when we have volunteers who join our office for the naturalization ceremonies. We are not promoting any type of advocacy groups. We use League of Women Voters, which we've been using for some time, and their one issue, it's a one nonpartisan issue, is voter registration. And again, we do not have, there's no branding that is sharing with the new citizens that they are League of Women Voters. They're simply given a badge or a sticker that says Pima County Recorder's Office volunteer, and anyone can volunteer with their organization. So if that organization wants to partner up, they may do so and go through the League of Women Voters.
So the answer is no.
The answer is no.
Thank you. Also, let's see, I had the Iowa ballot that was mailed. There is mailed ballots that don't return to you in time. Are those also segregated downtown as well?
We continue to receive ballots.
Yes.
Well past an election. We might receive something 2 months after the election, 6 months after the election. That's kind of continuous, and it does follow that same process. We do make sure that that is noted within the voter's file, and it again starts that NVRA process, and again that ballot is secured and archived, and we'll go through the archival system for destruction.
So if someone received an early ballot that was not for someone addressed at that home, we know they can, A, bring it into you in person, mail it back. Can they bring it to a vote center and also write that on there? Would that be accepted as?
We do not accept ballots that are not for the current election.
Okay. All right.
The difference would be that the recorder's office, we deal with the voter files, but the elections department utilizes our files, but they're not maintaining any of that information. And with the volume, during that time, there's no way to, it would just be an unvoted ballot packet, and it would be confusing for voters.
Okay. So it was reported at a vote center that someone had brought those in and dumped them into an early ballot box. They would have been unvoted at that time. What would you do with that? It would have been an unopened ballot packet then.
So thank you, Commissioner Caswell. Any particular, from vote centers, the drop boxes, The way it works on election day at night is those drop boxes go back to the elections department. They do the first inventory of everything that is within those drop boxes. They do not segregate anything, so they then return us an estimated number of ballots that were dropped off. When we get those from the elections department on our side, we will then go through and sort them. So anything that is in a ballot drop box that's not a voted ballot, and in this last 22 election cycle, we got we got ballots from Pinell County. We even had a Pennsylvania ballot. So anything that was not for our election is segregated. If it is an Arizona county, we'll work with the other counties and do follow-up with that. If it's just a ballot package, we didn't receive any ballot packages. We received what were voted ballot packets. So should, in your hypothetical, if someone were to come and put a early ballot packet back into one of those boxes, we would then segregate that. We would assign that to our downtown staff to do additional investigation as to whether or not that person intended. We would contact the voter and say the whole ballot packet was in the drop box unvoted. Just so you know, it's past the election. There's nothing we can do about this. And then we would do the necessary follow-up with it on that. But we've never actually had anybody return an unopened early ballot packet, at least in this last 22 cycle, to any of our drop boxes. They've always been a voted affidavit in there.
Vice Chair, may I follow up? And to, pardon me, thank you, Commissioner. Also, when we say drop box, we are talking about staffed drop boxes, not unstaffed. Pima County currently does not have unstaffed drop boxes. But again, even if we were to receive that mail, that could be an angry spouse, somebody who is not agreeing with their brother or sister about who they're voting for. We're always going to follow up, and always going to initiate the NVRA process where we additionally send additional mail. And if the voter is constantly, asking like, well, why is my mail not coming? They can always call our office. They can check their voter registration, and if there's anything that they're seeing that maybe they just live with a whole bunch of roommates and they're all inconsistent about where they put the mail. Whatever that is, if that voter has not received anything, they can contact our office. We can troubleshoot with them, either let them know where an early voting site is, or where a vote center is. And then I did share a know who to call document, and I have a few on the tables there, which share a little bit about the separation between the elections department, which is a separate department, and the recorder's office. The elections department is solely responsible for the vote centers, and we provide early voting. So we're always going to refer to it as that, using that language.
Commissioner Caswell, I believe that Director Hargrove has a follow-up too.
Sure, and I have one final question.
Would that be okay?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Caswell, I just wanted to follow up and clarify that voters can bring their own unvoted ballots back to the vote center and be issued a ballot, a regular ballot, and vote. So in that instance, we do receive them and we just void those ballots. So there is a place where they go. But any of the other ballots, we would not handle those.
Thank you, Ms. Hargrove, Director Hargrove. That's really, I was actually in my inspector as an inspector. I would, in my center as an inspector, I did not use them as people, they vote taking those ballots with them because they wanted to use them as that sample ballot. They voted that. That's 2 ballots in my election center then, right? I have too much going on in there that I need to keep eye on people that have duplicate ballots, right? But other vote centers did allow those ballots to be brought in to the vote center or into the voting booth when they filled out the newly printed ballot. I did have sample ballots printed. We used the sample ballot printing in the e-poll book, which worked well. So they could use it at the front check-in, remark that sample ballot. We would then take the other ballot, void it, before they headed into a voting booth. So I did have concerns because I know other vote centers were not taking those ballots and they were not voiding them. And to a point where others in the line knew what I was doing, they hid that later on. They didn't let me know that they had that ballot with them. So that is something I do have some concerns about. Thank you for addressing that. And Madam Recorder, thank you for this. I really appreciate this. I think this definitely will help solve some of the questions as to whose authority or who to direct their questions to. I have one final question, and it has to do with some things I experienced in my prior occupation doing the voter registrations and party. And it's something I never really got a complete answer to. But in a meeting last night, it was also noted that recently we had a purge in voter rolls that were extremely high numbers. Typically, we see the fluctuations that happen weekly. I would normally follow them throughout 2020 and so forth weekly. And so those are typical. You could see those are your regular maintenance updates. There were a few back in 2022. I think I communicated with F.N. Rodriguez at the time that there was about 6,000 voters that fell off the voters' rolls in 1 week's reporting. Now, I noticed that those have happened regularly, usually the second or third week of the month that I see if there's a purge, it's normally in that time frame. What type of list maintenance leads us to have such large changes in those voter registration numbers? And what type of maintenance is happening at that time that would be different than what we've described here today?
Thank you, Commissioner Caswell. First and foremost, I want us not to use the word purge, okay? That's not actually what's going on. At the end of a federal election cycle, anybody who has been in that inactive canceled status for 2 federal election cycles, they are removed from the voter registration roll. They are what we call archived. So the voter registration rolls, any canceled voter registration becomes an archived voter registration, and we keep that indefinitely. So what you are experiencing is that final cleanup after a 2 federal election cycle. So at the end of the 24 cycle in January, February, March, that time frame in 2025, we will once again do a 2 federal cycle removal of all voters who have been canceled through that time frame. That covers the 22 cycle through the 24 cycle. So that's always a large number that are coming to the archival status of the voter registration roll. So they're no longer on the roll that you would see. What you're talking about on the monthly status, those are the voters that we have identified that have started the NAVRA process, and they have gone into the inactive status. So if you're working just on the active voter list, so that will only reflect active voters within Pima County, it will not reflect inactive voters. As of right now, today, there are 56,000 inactive voters countywide here in Pima County. They will not show up on our voter registration numbers that we post on our website. Now, we certainly can put the inactive numbers on there. So is the drop down? Did we update that?
Yes.
Okay. So if we have if you can pull the inactive numbers on our website through that drop down, those are all the people that we have contacted who have not contacted us back, and we don't know if they're at the correct address. So they're not going to receive any sort of mail. They're not going to receive a ballot from us. They will receive a letter for us to do the cancellation, but they will not receive any. If they were for the City of Tucson election, they're not receiving the ballot that the City of Tucson has mailed to them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think that definitely clears up some of those larger changes that we see, and the regular monthly maintenance that also involves your inactive
Correct.
NABRA list.
So
Okay.
the monthly, and I just want to kind of go back and reiterate this. We run an NCOA report, that National Change of Address report. We run it on a monthly basis. And then when we are in an active election, we will run it right before the active election at the voter registration cutoff. And then once the election is done, we will receive any sort of ACS, so address change files from any returned mail. We will update it, and then we will run NCOA again at the end of an election. So between that 3-month time frame, we try to capture any changes in voter registration addresses. And then at the end of an election, anybody else who has a change of address that has that NAVRA process, we will send out mailings to them saying, we've received a change of address from the post office. Please confirm, and then we will start that process. So that will also account for some of the fluctuation that you see month to month, depending on how close we are to an election. So that process we did back in April and then after May,
Yes.
because information special election with the city of Tucson. We were updating our own information from the city of the ballots that they had returned, and then we were updating our own information through the NCOA. So again, we do that on a monthly basis, and then we do it twice before an election and then basically after an election.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do we have other questions or discussion about that? Otherwise, we'll move on. I think it makes sense to move on to the signature verification requirements while all the folks are here to talk about that. And who had questions about that?
I was the one who asked it to be on the list, and again, that's for the recorder staff to answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Tellman. I provided a PowerPoint printout. There's a few copies on this front table here. We had a little bit of confusion interpreting this question. And so what we created a document. This is something that I'd actually like for our staff to have printed within our ballot processing center or ballot processing facility, which is right down the road. That way that observers who come visit can see what this process looks like. There was one question earlier from the public about whether or not signature verification happens in multiple locations. It does not. It is only at our ballot processing facility. We only have the one giant room, which is a little bit of a problem because of noise level. We have on one side of the building envelope milling, and we're also double checking ballot rosters. I'll walk everyone through the process of what happens for signature verification and the process once we receive those ballots. So I think there have been a lot of questions about that. Is that appropriate? Is that okay?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. All right, so first of all, the very first page, ballot processing facility. We have a secured facility which requires swipe key for entry. All employees must wear assigned badges, and all visitors must be pre-approved and signed in. We have secure ballot rooms. They are where we secure all our ballots in our possessions. Ballots may be in different stages of processing, and access is limited to only two-person teams of opposite parties, and only assigned supervisors have access to keys to the ballot room. I, the recorder, do not have keys to the ballot room. The ballot process, page 2 and slide 3. Ballots are picked up by couriers of Postal Service party at our early voting locations or from the United States Postal Service. We pick them up at Cherry Bell. Ballots are immediately secured in our ballot room. Trays of ballots are taken out by two-person teams and go through the following processes: envelope milling, separating the ballot affidavits from return envelopes, scanning, signature verification, second checking if necessary, ballot resolution if necessary, turnover, bundling, and a physical turnover to the elections department. The envelope milling, we open return envelopes to remove ballot affidavits. These are typically the yellows. We do not open early ballot affidavit envelopes themselves. I'm going to repeat that portion. We do not open ballot affidavit envelopes. Ballot affidavits remain sealed throughout the duration of the signature verification process. Every once in a while, there will be a reason we need to open a ballot affidavit. The last time unfortunately, we were not able to scan an envelope, and I was called over because of I was in an opposite party. So someone with a red lanyard asked me to come over. I have a blue lanyard, and the two of us opened a ballot together, and we found a piece of gum that was not allowing the ballot affidavit to be scanned. And so we had to find a pair of gloves and remove that piece of gum before being able to reseal it, sign that we had opened it, and then continue with the scanning process, because otherwise it would not have fit through our scanners. So every once in a while, there'll be a weird reason, but generally we are not opening those. The envelope separation, slide 5, white ballot affidavit envelopes are separated from the yellow return envelopes by hand by two-person teams of different political parties. Returned envelopes are double-checked before being designated as official election trash. Ballot affidavits are secured in the ballot room until scanning. Ballot scanning. Ballot affidavits are currently scanned a handful at a time in two-person opposite party teams. I saw that there was a question about the Agilis somewhere. We're going to talk about that a little later, but it is basically a high-speed, high-volume, large scanner, and so we will use that instead of the small handfuls. We will be able to do trays at a time. Each ballot affidavit has a unique barcode which enables us to associate it with an individual voter. And once the ballot is scanned, we can determine within our voter data system whether a ballot has been received. So it's how we mark that it's in our house and that we have custody of that ballot. Voters who are signed up for the ballot alert system will receive a text message or email indicating that their ballot has been received by our office, and voters may alter their ballot on the website or just call our office to check if we have received their ballot, and we'll be able to tell. Typically, phone calls are going to our downtown office as opposed to the country club facility where the ballots are being processed, and so if it is marked within the system, everyone at all locations are able to see where that ballot is located. For signature verification, slide 7, trained signature verifiers scan the ballot affidavit barcode, which brings up the voter's file. Verifiers compare the signature on the affidavit with the signature on the voter's file, and many voters have multiple signatures on file. I actually just showed my file the other day. We had the City of Tucson city clerk come visit our office, and we pulled up my file, and I have 12 signatures on file. Some of them just listed before I was married. Gabriella I think I even have my full middle name written out as if I was going to sign that every time. And then as you see the progression of my age and the number of times I have to sign things, you can see my signature getting smaller and smaller, but still retaining the elements of what makes it unique to my signature. And so we spent some time looking at those. But typically what happens is once we scan that ballot, 3 signatures will show up that the three most recent, if that voter has 3 on file. If they only have 1, then only 1 will show up. And we then compare that against the physical ballot affidavit. If the voter If the verifier cannot confirm the signature's authenticity, they will take it to a second checker. If the second checker agrees that the signature on the affidavit envelope is not a match, they give it to the ballot resolution team for further investigation. If the verifier is unsure of the authenticity of the signature, they can also compare it to the other signatures in the same household to see whether someone else may have signed it. And so that's something we see typically with parents and their adult children. For second checking, signature verifiers who can't confirm identity take the problem ballot affidavit to a second checker. This is typically somebody who is much more seasoned and has been with us numerous cycles and gone through numerous trainings. The second checker either accepts or rejects the signature and explains to the first checker why they made that decision. So we're constantly training, even as we're reviewing those signatures. If the signature is rejected, the second checker includes a form explaining why it's being sent to the ballot resolution team. In the past, you may have heard us use the term problem ballots. We don't think that voters are problems, so we wanted to make sure that that wasn't conveyed in that way, and so we talk about these ballots as being either resolved or unresolved. And so unresolved ballots are sent to the ballot resolution team. Common reasons for unresolved ballots are household mix-ups. So this is when a household member signs a ballot affidavit belonging to a different household member. So that might be me accidentally signing my husband's and my husband accidentally signing mine. If there's a situation like that, but we haven't received the second ballot, maybe we only have Gabriela Caceres Kelly and Ryan Kelly's signature on there, then that is just going to sit there and wait, and we're actually going to start contacting the voter. We have to have two. They would need to have mine with my husband's signature on it and my husband's with my signature on it for us to make a match, for us to push those through to be verified together, and we usually attach them. If we don't receive a second ballot, however, then we're unable to move forward with that process, and the voter has to be contacted. So household mix-up, signature is printed rather than in cursive. So sometimes a voter will just write their name as opposed to signing their name, or sign their name as opposed to writing their name. We're always following a signature. It does not need to be in cursive. It is whatever mark that a person makes on their voter registration form, and as long as it matches, that's what we're going to take. Or there's obvious voter assistance, but no note indicating assistance was, I'm sorry, that was an error. No note indicating assistance was needed, meaning maybe somebody's signature, or you can see that it's very light or shaky, and then you can see that there was help with that, but it's not listed or noted on there. We call the voter. For people, we just have a note indicating in their file and the instance. We just have to make a note in their file, and then the next time we won't have to contact them. There are people who will always require assistance when voting. So we contact the voters via phone, text message, email, USPS mail, once every week until the election. And as it gets closer to the election, a family member of the voter may be contacted, and we go through that cycle every week. Slide 10, turnover and bundling. When signature verification is complete, ballots are returned to the ballot room. Rosters are generated per signature verifier, and two-person teams of two different political parties will confirm that the roster matches what is in the ballot tray. Once confirmed, the ballot affidavits are bundled with the accompanying rosters, and then we do a physical turnover. The physical turnover, the ballot trays are literally wheeled through a set of double doors. We have one door locked on one side, and the elections department has the door locked on the other side. And we come together, we will typically give the other a call and say, okay, we're ready to come over for a physical turnover. And they meet us at the door, they open their side, we open our side, and we literally wheel the ballots into the elections department. That is the only time that our ballots leave our custody once we have them in our custody. I know there have been some questions about whether Runbeck takes our ballots. There, at no point are we handing ballots over to Runbeck. That is not something that is done in Pima County. That's not very practical. They're 2.5 hours away. They remain in our facility, locked and secured, until they are transferred over to the elections department. Once the voter files are then updated, the ballot status updates are sent via text or email to voters, notifying them that their ballots have been turned over to the elections department, or again, they can call or check on the website. And every once in a while, we may receive a redlined ballot back from the elections department. Ballots that are redlined are simply ballot affidavits, which when they opened them, because only the elections department typically opens them, they are either empty or they contain something other than a valid ballot. Sometimes people put sample ballots in, sometimes they put their grocery list in, or maybe a ballot from an election from the city of Tucson that they forgot to mail before. Every once in a while, we'll receive that. If we do receive a red line ballot, and if we're still within the voting period, we will contact the voter of their error and either send them a new ballot if we're within time, or recommend that they vote on election day. Unfortunately, if it's after election day, there's nothing we can do, and that voter is simply out of luck. So that is the verification process.
Thank you, very thorough.
Questions,
And I just want to share, in addition, this is a draft that we're working on. We're working to get this up on our website. We know that people are curious. We would like to have this with pictures. And I know that we were unsure of what the AV capabilities were of this room, so that's why we had it printed.
Thank you, yes. Commissioner Tillman.
Can you talk a little bit about the training of the signature verifiers? And I have twice attended your trainings in the past, and it's really enlightening. Will commissioners be invited to attend? Will you let us know when the next one is?
I would actually, I'm working with my team now to try to schedule a date where we actually have the commissioners come visit our location. I think it would be helpful to have a walkthrough and for you all to see the space. And so we will be working on creating that type of presentation for you. So yes, if you would like to attend, if you are a commissioner and you would like to attend one of our trainings, yes, I think that's reasonable for you to attend. We'll provide you with the information. We provide training ahead of every single election cycle. In particular, currently, we have been working hard to build up the number of signature verification trained staff in order to respond to the flood of initiatives and petitions that we're expecting to see in the upcoming, in the 2024 cycle. So we have been using, what we've been doing is we've been, for the City of Tucson election, utilizing half of the staff who are returned seasoned veterans with brand new staff who have not done that signature verification, because there's an element of guidance that they're providing and additional training that the veteran signature verifiers are providing. And so that has been a really great, we've seen just really wonderful results from taking that tactic. And those are ongoing. So we typically have our own in-house trainings led by our chief deputy ahead of every election cycle. And then for the federal election cycle, we have actually we'll bring in a forensic signature verification training, and we actually it's the same training that the Arizona Secretary of State's office does for the other counties. We bring them to Pima County, and then we also invite some of the smaller counties. So Santa Cruz County has participated in the past, and City of Tucson is interested in participating in that as well. And we open that up. That one is a little tighter on seating because we are verifying a lot of people. But, you know, if we have the spacing for it, definitely. But definitely our in-house, and our in-house is much more thorough and much more practical and hands-on to the actual work and what you'd actually be seeing on the screens. So that one is actually much more recommended.
The two that I have attended were really good. They lasted about 2 hours, and they had people doing exercises, practicing, and it was really worth seeing. So I recommend if anybody can be in on, if any commissioners can get on that, please let us know.
Thank you. We'll
Yeah.
keep you posted.
Thank you. I too have participated in training sessions on that over the years, as they say. Is there further discussion on this? I think there is. Commissioner
Thank you,
Berenstain?
Madam Vice Chair, and once again, thank you, Commissioner Tillman, for adding this to the agenda. So I'm gonna basically reference the document that was sent in our read-ahead, and I just want to add right up front, we have an ad hoc committee here for the commission that's developing the overall electoral process. We've been working diligently on for the last few months. And the one thing that we haven't been able to fill in is the signature verification, the voter registration, database, maintenance stuff. So what's been presented today fills in a lot of that empty space in our overall block diagram. And so I would ask you, Madam Recorder, if you work with Ms. Hargrove's deputy, Jeremy George, who's our primary support, developing these flow charts or these diagrams on however this process works. So in a subsequent meeting we can actually finally fill in that portion of the electoral process, which is what this commission is supposed to do. So, is that possible?
We have a joint meeting planned soon. We'll have discussion.
Okay,
regarding.
thank you. So this is titled the City of Tucson Primary Election 2023. So this basically is going to be used then in the general election for the City of Tucson in November. Basically the same procedures that we have outlined here.
Let me
Is that
ask,
correct?
are we moving on to item D, which is a discussion of the City of Tucson, or this is more generic?
No, this is still
Okay.
on 5, so this was all 5C.
Okay.
So,
So this was the packet that was given to the commissioners for agenda item 5C. So the and it says signature verification procedures. So we're using that right now in 2023, basically, for the City of Tucson. But then when we bring in the runback solution and do the sorting, and if we use the same basic procedure in like we did in 2022, we would in 2024 for the general election. So we're going to have to update this document here, integrating the runback solution, correct?
No.
No?
Okay, so for the City of Tucson is somewhat different. City of Tucson facilitates their own election.
Okay.
And so for the primary, they are doing all ballot processing, which I have described in detail here. We are not opening return envelopes. We are not scanning any of these ballots ahead of schedule. They will simply bring those ballots to our ballot processing facility. We will secure them, and then we signature verify them, and then
Okay.
we return them back.
Okay.
And that is somewhat different. And I should thank you for that. I will make sure that I update this. This is our normal process. And again, with the city of Tucson, primary, it is slightly different. And also
Okay.
with the special election that we
But
had
when we go
earlier in
into
the
the
year.
presidential preference election and stuff like that, then
we
the
have the-
run-back solution is supposed to be in place, correct?
So we also have the consolidated Pima County and City of Tucson election coming up, and that is also, we'll be following more of this model
Okay.
in that cycle. But at no point will Runbeck have custody of our ballots.
Right, okay.
We do not send anything to Runbeck. It is impractical. It is 2.5 hours
I know.
away.
And I was
We-
talking about,
So that is not happening.
well, no,
The-
because
what-
my question was, and I'm sorry, because of the sorting that goes on. And so, this process here looks rather laborious.
So the sorting that you're referring to, and when we say sorting, what's happening with the Agilis machine? The Agilis machine is a high-volume scanner. And so currently, we are taking literally a handful about this big, and we are putting it into our scanners, taking another, putting it into our scanners, putting another. It takes a very, very long time. When we receive this Agilis ballot scanner, sorter, it's a miller, it has a variety of functions, we will literally be able to grab a chunk and put it in and continuously feed through entire trays of ballots. It can actually scan about 20,000 ballots within an hour. That's a really huge amount. That means that we have less people having to physically, 15 at a time, 10 at a time, feed those ballots. We usually have we have 4 scanners that we're typically just, and it's very cumbersome.
Sure.
It takes a long time, and those scanners are at end of life. They're always getting jammed. We have to run them through again. It's very frustrating. What happens once we scan those ballots, we are able to then upload that information and connect the unique barcode from the envelope with the voter's file. And that's how we're ensuring that only one voter receives one vote every time. And so when we have this machine from Agilis, it's simply a piece of equipment.
Sure.
It will follow the same thing. It will be on a closed, secure network within our facility, and it will simply replace the small 15 at a time
Right.
ballot scanners that we have. The only difference there, number one, is huge with volume, right? We are a jurisdiction that receives so many ballots. It's impractical that we don't have that equipment at this time. It's really, there's no reason for us to not have this type of equipment. And other jurisdictions that are smaller than us already have this equipment. And so we're simply updating the equipment needed within the office. The other thing that it is able to do, it will identify ballots that don't have signatures, and so the majority of them are simply going to go through and they're getting scanned, and once they're scanned, they're put back into the ballot room until they need to be signature verified. And that allows us to redirect the people that we used to have, again, four scanners. We typically have a 3-person team working on 2 scanners, so 6 people, 15 at a time. And so we'll be able to have 3 to 4 people, and then the people who weren't doing the scanning will be able to redirect for signature verification, which is the more cumbersome lift. That is the bigger thing. It allows us to utilize their time much more effectively, and then also the people who are running back and forth from the ballot room with those trays, so that's an additional 2 to 4 people. And so The Agilis has the ability to identify when signatures are missing, and it sets it off to the side. It segregates them only for that purpose. That's the only time that we're really looking to sort any of the ballot affidavits, and that's so that we can then expedite the connection between those missing signatures, and we can then send those ballots over to our ballot resolution team so that they can call the voters and say, hey, you forgot to sign this. And so that is all that the machine is really doing, is it's able to identify if, like we said earlier, we had a ballot from, I think we had ballots from New York and Chicago and all over the place. Sometimes we'll get a city of Tucson ballot. Those are things that need to be brought to our attention immediately. Those are likely, to experience an issue. And so, other than that, it is simply a high volume scanner. Ballots never leave our facility once they come in until we are until we turn them over to the elections department, at which time we do provide them with the paperwork for that, and we do, the chain of custody is documented.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. And yeah, having voted in other states and been on a board of canvassers in the state of Michigan, and I still got my fellow former commissioners saying to me, Tom, what the heck is taking so long in Arizona for you guys to canvass the vote, So I'm going like, I don't know. But this will help expedite this, and I think to help with the public trust, which is what we do here in this commission, that would help out, that expedition of that portion of the electoral process.
Commissioner Bresney, I don't mean to interrupt, but were your question earlier regarding the signature verification procedures, were you asking as to whether or not that specific document was going to be revised for the next election?
This one?
The one.
This big, thick one?
Yes.
40-something pages? Yes. This
So
is the
that
one.
particular document is always revised for the next election based off of the differences of the election that we are conducting. The procedures as outlined in that document still stay the same, but it will be reflective of any differences if it's unique to the City of Tucson election.
Okay.
Or if it is a consolidated or election, or if it's just a general federal election. So the changes to that document, the revisions to that document for the next election will be absolutely minor, because they will be removing specific call-outs to what you do specifically for the City of Tucson.
Okay.
But these procedures, this document will still stay within the 40-page range, because it is a detailed document for our signature verifiers to go through the actual process of processing the signature verification. This document is also the basic foundation that we have for our signature verification training. So this is what's provided to our signature verifiers. And then we have a training and multiple PowerPoints that take each of these procedures and go into them in more depth. So this document is the foundation for the actual processing signature verification process. And then also, Commissioner, I'd point out that agenda item 5C, we also provided you and the commission the forensic signature reference guide.
Yep.
So that forensic signature reference guide that we provided to the commission, that is the reference guide that we provide our signature verifiers to help them understand the process of forensic signature verification. That is what we provide in our in-house training that we do before every election. It's to supplement the training that is provided, that we use the contracted Secretary of State. So the Secretary of State has a contract with a forensic signature expert, a certified expert, someone who actually goes and does this for a living. That person is the person who comes down and does the teaching for us. It's a half-day teaching. It's the one that we do, that we host and invite the smaller jurisdictions like Santa Cruz, Green Lake, all of those other counties. we invite them to our location so they can go through that certification process. And that is required of all the counties. But the information that we've provided you is specific just to Pima County.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Just a couple more questions. And it was nice, you know, you discussed a little bit earlier, Madam Recorder, about the pre-approved visitors roster. And so I can't remember if last year or not, because I wasn't on the commission. So is everybody in the commission included in this pre-approved thing where we could go into a tabulation room or the signature verification room or a vote? How does that, what is this approved visitor log thing?
So thank you, Commissioner Bresney. I would first point you to the know who to call document that I shared, because the recorder's office does not oversee tabulation whatsoever. So do not touch that. That is the responsibility of the elections department, and you would have to coordinate with them. I am only talking about the ballot processing facility where we perform signature verification, where we process our ballots, open them, where we do the signature verification, where we resolve ballots. That is the only thing that I'm talking about. And in the past, we have had commissioners who have requested that simply reaching out to us and scheduling that with us. That I think is really helpful. We want to be able to make sure that somebody's available to answer your questions. When we have observers there, typically we're only able to we're not able to guarantee that you're able to have an interaction with someone. You might simply just be there and observing and not have one-on-one of a supervisor or a member of my administration. And so I would like, you know, have one of my admin team to be there to answer your questions if we can. But we typically will, of course, again, I'm planning to have a walkthrough for you all, so we can work on scheduling that, and you can visit our facility.
And the whole signature verification course too. You know, I'm looking forward to going back to school.
Sure.
You know, so I appreciate that, because I do remember, I think it was on the discussion, I don't know if it was in the EIC or on the Board of Supervisors, about members of the commission going into the tabulation room is or do you, and I realize that they were, you know, there's two different departments, you know, associated with that. Is there a pre-approved list where, you know, if we're not an actual party?
Who are you addressing this to?
To Madam Director Hargrove. Yeah, I mean, is there, I mean, so what's the process, so?
Commissioner Beresny, no, there isn't a general pre-approved list, but we do allow commissioners to come in, understanding that it may be one at a time or maybe two if it's a active election because of space.
Okay.
There's not a lot of space in the tabulation room, and there are ballots in there, so we don't want a lot of people in.
Sure.
You know, but typically from the observation area, we can show you everything. It's a little easier in the room where the early board is actually working with the affidavits or the ballots or the adjudication room. It's a little easier to get you in there and let you see there's a little bit more space.
Okay.
But no, I mean, you just come in, let me know when you want to come by, and you're welcome to do that. And we even had commissioners come in on election night to observe that process as well, so.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Director.
Thank
We'll leave that
both
up
of
to
you.
you to make that,
Yeah,
to make
yeah,
your
okay,
appointment,
so it's
okay?
just like the voter making sure their address is
Can I
updated,
follow
you
up
know.
on
it's-
that?
Pardon me?
Can I follow up on that? In the past, we've been told that commissioners should be on an approved list from their party. And we have 3 commissioners who have been observing the city election, and we were told to do that through the party, not the commissioners. So we had Constance, myself, and Ryan were authorized by the Democratic Party to observe in both the City Elections Department and the Recorder's Office.
Commissioner Tillman, I think we're talking about maybe two different things here. So I understand the official observers actually there the entire time observing the balloting process, but the commissioners just like to come through and do like a tour, and they're not staying the entire time.
Yeah.
So I think that's what
That's
you're
what I was
referring to,
alluding to,
correct?
yes.
Okay.
So, thank you, Commissioner Tillman. I think there may have just simply been miscommunication about the intention of that. Observers will typically go through their party. If they're, and we have repeat observers, people who come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they'll be there for 2 hours at a time each time. And so that's generally the process. If you are, if that's what you're communicating your intention is to do, which you are very welcome to do, we do recommend that people go through their party if they're affiliated with the party, because we have to limit the number of people that we have within the facility. We do have limited staff, supervisors that are very busy, and we're trying to allow observers as a courtesy, but really we're needing to ensure that it does not stop production or does not impact production in any way, because we do have our own deadlines. And so we're trying to minimize the impact of observers, and that's the goal. And that's the goal of the observers. So if there are multiple observers within a space and they're trying to talk with one another, and the things can get kind of messy in that way. But if you're coming as a commissioner, EIC, I'd be happy again to host you. And then again, I think we do need to have a walkthrough of our facility, and I'm happy to facilitate that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Caswell.
In regards to that, having been a worker in the signature room, I understand there are some confusion that we have. So one of the things I really enjoyed working with Pam Franklin in the past in the signature room is that these documents were right there for all the observers. And she was very good at making sure the observers knew that there was a booklet there to review not only this document, but that forensic document was included in there. And so at any time during an election, the exact procedures for that election were in that room for the observers to read through and to get the instructions. So they understood the process in there. So I wanted to make that clear that these directions have been in there and have been helpful, and I do appreciate that. So I do expect that will continue, and that all the parties should let their observers know that the instructions for that election are also included in that location, so they can review that. And so that was very helpful, and I hope that continues. I don't know that everyone knew that was available there. I would tell my observers to go and see that. Now, I do have something later on the observers, and so I'm going to address some things there. But that's something like Mr. Beresny and so forth. So as observers, they are approved by their party. I know that process. We've done that process. And guests, though, in the signature room, this signature process, just so we understand from my experience with Pam Franklin, it's a secured room. We don't get in there as an observer unless we have our documentation with us as well. So it's not just anybody allowed into this room. And there's no more than one per party typically allowed at that time. So an observer will be considered differently as a party observer than we would be as that guest of that moment. And we wouldn't want to impede your work for the day in either department. But I do know that having myself been able to observe and work these procedures in both sides, and including the City of Tucson, is important. It is important to know that the City of Tucson has their own sorting equipment, Pitney Bowes. They do their own tabulation there, so the ballot process and turnover is just for that signature verification process in the city of Tucson, whereas in Pima County, it's a bit different, but I appreciate that it's in-house. So thank you very much for letting me address that, because being on that other side, I think sometimes confuses us as to the two different guests and observers, kind of.
Thank you, Commissioner Caswell. Yes, when observers come to visit us, they are presented with a set of guidelines of expectations, the rules of the House, and they're also handed our training materials. They're actually handed it to, we don't, just have them think that they know where they're located. We give them to them as part of our check-in process with observers. And we find that people are really grateful for those, and those are public documents, so we're happy to share those. But they are constantly updated, and we do, for any given election, there may be changes based on the need for that specific election, such as the city of Tucson, where again, they're facilitating their own election. We only provide them with our voter list in order to generate the ballots, and then we send out their military and overseas ballots because we have that system available to us, and then we do signature verification and any petition challenges if we should come across them.
Okay.
It's been a mission of mine for many years that I've been on this commission to get all the commissioners to come down and observe the process. In the past, we had commissioners who were on this commission for 8 to 10 years who never once appeared. So I really think it's almost should be a requirement.
I agree. I'm looking forward to going to school.
I'm going to move on to item D, which is the discussion of consolidated school election with City of Tucson. I think we've maybe, and we'll be coming back to some of these other items in a minute, but I do want to get to this one now, and Commissioner Tillman.
Refer to Mrs. Hargrove.
What exactly are you looking for, Commissioner Tillman?
What school districts will be involved in this? Will everything be by mail? All the school districts approving an all-mail election for their district? And will people get only one ballot if they happen to live both in TUSD and City of Tucson? Will they get one ballot or two?
Thank you for those questions, Commissioner Tillman. So I'm just going to kind of skip ahead a little bit. We are still, I know Ms. Heiser has communicated with schools, and we've communicated with schools, and we're still trying to determine whether or not it is going to be an all-mail election. We are pretty sure that it's an all-mail election, but we have to make sure all of the school districts are in agreement with that. And that has not been confirmed yet, to my knowledge, to this date.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman. Director Hargrove, I've got news for you. It's going to be an all ballot by mail election for everybody.
Awesome.
The school districts have confirmed each district has passed a call to election, and they've all passed for an all ballot by mail election,
Awesome.
as has the city of Tucson.
Perfect. So the school districts are Alta Valley Elementary School District 51, Tucson Unified School District, Flowing Wells School District, Sahuarita School District, Sunny Side School District, and of course, City of Tucson. So there are propositions and bond elections for these school districts, and they're still, I think they've sent us most of the language for the ballot, but we still need to take a look at that and confirm. Did we get all of the language for? So we have the language for the ballots. We're still waiting on the Spanish translation, and we will begin programming the election for schools and the City of Tucson for the general election.
And people will get just one ballot if they're in a district and the city?
Yes. Yes, they will get one ballot for the crossover. Yes, it would be very confusing if they did not, but yes, they will get one ballot.
And the date?
November
7th.
the
November
7th.
7th.
Thank you.
And will there be ballot drop-off locations for every ward in the city and for every school district, or
I-
combined in some way?
Commissioner Tillman, I can answer that for you. Thank you for the question. We, through the IGA that we have with the City of Tucson, the City of Tucson is allowing us to use all of their ballot replacement sites in the November elections. So every ballot replacement site that they are using for the primary, we will also be using those for the general. Flowing Wells Unified School District, Altar Valley Elementary School District, and Sahuarita Unified School District have all offered us their administrative buildings to have ballot replacement sites on Election Day for those voters. And then Tucson Unified School District we are working with, and they are offering us 2 ballot replacement sites for the west side and the southeast side of Pima County for the areas where TUSD has a large overlap with unincorporated Pima County. So on Election Day, there will be a total of 11 ballot replacement sites on November 7th operating from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then we will have 3 full ballot replacement sites at the start of when ballots are mailed, which will be October 10th through November 7th at the Pima County Recorder's Office downtown location, the 240 North Stone, at the Pima County Recorder's Office Ballot Processing Center, which is 6550 South Country Club Road. And the City of Tucson has offered us their Elections Administration Building off of 12th Street to be open the entire time for a ballot replacement site. Our east side recording location will also be available as a drop-off only site throughout the entirety of the November election. We will only be accepting ballots. It's just too small of a location for us to make it a ballot replacement site as well. I hope that answers your question.
They're all run by the recorder, not the elections department?
The recorder's office will be running all of the they're not early, November, ballot replacement for this consolidated November.
Any questions, comments? You're moving the microphone, does that mean you're going?
No, ma'am.
No, okay. I find myself having to look, if I'm looking here, somebody over here wants it back and forth, so be sure to get my attention. Okay. We have already talked a bit about the observers. I would like us to move into that area now. This is document F that you presented to us, is that right? Because we've had so much conversation about it already, and we've got everyone here, so let's do that now, unless there's any objection to that. Okay, then
Thank you, Madam Vice
Commissioner
President.
Caswell, please.
I just had a question because I have received some correspondence, and I work with volunteers to make sure that we get you the election workers you need. We try to push election workers both to the elections department, the recorder's department, as well as the observers as well. We believe that having an open and transparent process is the best way to address the public's trust. So I have a question as to a meeting that Madam Recorder had with the Pima County Republican Party volunteer coordinators for the special election that happened in May. And there was a comment made that the recorder had indicated that there was difficulty that previous workers that were Republicans are now flipping to non-Republicans, making it difficult to add Republicans regarding the permanent staff. I'm very concerned about that. And I was wondering, do you have any statistical data to indicate what we're looking at here? There have been prior elections that I've been a member of in the past. These allegations have been made about our recorder's department and such in the past, that to fill quotas, election workers or permanent workers did change party affiliation to meet those requirements. That was in the past. But this new statement here is concerning to me because I want to make sure that we have that representation, no matter what party we're talking here, that we try to balance that as much as possible and do our best to get out into the public to get those workers for you. Recently this week, the city of Tucson just approved their election board workers. On the election board alone, there are 61 people listed for the early ballot boards. 40 of them are Republicans. If the city of Tucson, which is more party aligned democratically, can find enough help for the city of Tucson elections, I don't know why we would be having a difficulty in the Pima County Recorder's Department. And when would you like to see any push for any workers to your office to be in place so that they can help you in this next cycle? Or are you already where you need to be with the workers that you have? I want to make that push. I want to make sure that we get those people to you, but I don't want to push people to you that will be sidelined, not utilized, or that have arrived late to the process and not cause more confusion in that process. Thank you, Madam Recorder.
Thank you, Commissioner Caswell. First, I think it's really important for everyone to hear, we never encourage staff members to change their party affiliation. That we absolutely respect every voter's ability to choose their party. It is very sacred. Within our office, we take of that very seriously, and even the suggestion of that is not appropriate at any level. So that does not happen. What I was referring to, however, is a number of people who have shared with me. As you know, I came on in 2021, and I was meeting staff for the very first time in January of 2021, and throughout the cycles. And as I was meeting my staff, longtime returning folks who have been signature verifying for us, who have been ballot processing for us, known individuals that would come up and would say, I changed my party affiliation in this last cycle, and this is why. We do not, right away, we do not share, we don't talk about politics within our space, and so right away, those comments they're shut down immediately, but a lot of people have shared that, and every once in a while we will be talking about where to assign someone, and we're like, oh, this person's a red lanyard, and then we'll hear something like, actually, they just informed their supervisor that they changed parties and now they're this lanyard. And we actually never talk about the parties. We either assign a blue lanyard for Democrat, red for Republican, or purple for Libertarian, or no party designated, Green Party, or et cetera. And so we really just talk about the lanyard colors. And so that just, we're having to have those conversations in regards to staffing of specific locations. We're continuously hiring. We're hiring now. That information is listed on our website. We have shared that repeatedly. Typically, we do have a little bit of trouble as opposed to one day. Again, the separation of the duties. Early voting versus election day voting are two very separate things. Election day is one really long day plus a training. So it's really usually an evening or a weekend training with Constance, with Director Hargrove, and then the very long election day, and that's it. For early voting, it could be a week-long assignment, which many people have difficulty taking time off of work to do that, or it could be a 2-week assignment, 3-4 week assignment, or for several months at part-time work. And so our signature verifiers are there. We have them working from 8:15 typically till around noon is when we are finished with the City of Tucson election, and then we have them working on an additional project if they would like to. But they're intermittent staff. They're not bound by a certain number of hours that they need to be there. And when we are hiring, we are not hiring people based on their political party affiliation. We are hiring people, and then once they're hired, we then check their voter registration to ensure that they've met compliance with the state, and then we then assign them where we need them based on where we need them. And so that is just the typical process for us. As far as observers, my office does not require observers to function. There are certain practices, I believe, I'm not 100% sure because it's a separate department, right? But the elections department, there are some machines that they cannot run unless they have specific party ballots with observers. We are not bound by anything like that for requiring that. We are simply, as a gesture of goodwill and transparency, providing the opportunity as a courtesy to the parties and to interested folks, such as the commissioners, to observe in our facilities. But it is not required for us to have observers in order to complete our portion of the elections process.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Recorder.
Anything further?
And we will be advertising for, again, typically, we're only, we're having people work for much longer periods of time in the recorder's office, but with the City of Tucson consolidated election, we will have one-day opportunities for ballot replacement sites, I believe. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to do that exactly. The City of Tucson staff may be available. We may be utilizing their staff. This is something that we're communicating because our office under my administration has not been through a consolidated election of this level yet. So this is we're talking about having maybe some of our staff mixed with City of Tucson. We're trying to troubleshoot that, but there may be opportunities there.
Thank you.
Okay. Further questions, comments on that issue? No? All right. For some reason, I suspect there's some interest in the Runbeck situation, and so we're going to now jump up to the first topic, if we can. Discussion of Runbeck election services, et cetera. And Commissioner Beresny, you want to start that process?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Just to kind of preface this, I'm kind of a geek with contracts because I did it both on the contractor side and the government side when I worked for the federal government. So I was looking at, so I'm basically basing on everything on the contract that we have, that the Recorder's Office had approved by the Board of Supervisors a few weeks ago. So I go back to the original cover sheet of this, and the program goals, states to efficiently process the high volume of early ballots returned to Pima County voters, and will provide an automated solution to initial return and scanning of the early ballot affidavit, freeing up the staff. So does this include, this includes both the mail-in ballots and the early voting center facilities, right? Okay.
And since this is being recorded, I will just affirm, yes, that is correct.
That's correct, okay. And then I look at the metrics. the metrics in the contract, it says determined by a total processing time of early ballot from start to finish. So what is the start and what is the finish?
The start to finish is the process that I walked you through, the PowerPoint that I shared regarding walking through our facility and preparing for scanning. And the actual scanning is going to be done. I know there had been some concern that, again, that Runbeck would have somehow be involved with any of that. Runbeck is simply a vendor and printer. They provide us with our ballots, the
Right.
printing of our ballots and
that's a separate
mailing.
contract, correct? I'm sorry.
Right. And then also equipment. And so this is simply a piece of equipment. And so for the Agilis contract in particular, what they're asking, what we have drawn up there is really about their staff will be on site for the first election in order to train us, in order to make sure that nothing goes wrong. That could be a devastating blow if we can't get our scanner to scan. That literally will halt production. And so we are asking them to be here on site to troubleshoot as we go through our very first election cycle with
And
it.
That's the
However,
presidential preference election,
yes.
correct?
However, my staff is going to be fully trained to operate the machine
Okay.
and operate the equipment. And in future elections, we won't need to have Runback, knock
Yeah.
on wood. We won't need to have them on site, on premises. And again, those ballots never leave our facility, and they're never, we never transfer the custody of those ballots. My staff will be handling all, with simply them here to ensure that nothing goes wrong during that time. And so we're making sure that the scanning is continuous, that it's working, that it's we're able to transfer data in a secure way. All of that is happening under watch of our staff during that period. And so that's the start. The start to finish is when we're
Because I want to use, because I voted in the primary last year, I voted in an early voting center. And so my wife and I voted in the one on La Cañada in Sahuarita on a Thursday. And so we were able to track our ballot, okay, and I love that feature.
Thank you.
And it came until the day after the election, which was the following Wednesday, so this is in the seventh day, and it was still waiting for signature verification to be sent over to the Elections Department for tabulation. So how much of that week, and a typical voter like me and somebody else who voted at that same vote center, I talked to a person, same exact thing. So then, how much sooner is my vote going to be tabulated?
Thank you, Commissioner Bresney. In 2022, we had 20 or so staff members and intermittent staff come down with COVID.
Oh,
Very
okay.
aggressive, very aggressive COVID. And we had people out. And we suddenly did not have enough signature verifiers to deal with the volume that we were receiving. And so unfortunately, we were behind. We hope to not have that happen again. And the way that we have been addressing that has been by building up our signature verifiers. As we said, we're going through a very specific format of how to do that. We're making sure that we have signature verifiers, because we'll also be receiving those statewide petitions and initiatives and all of that at the same time as well, and that'll also create a demand for signature verifiers. So what we're doing right now is we're actively training multiple so that we have an overabundance of signature verifiers, and we'll continue to do that through the 2024 cycle, and we'll be trying to utilize as many of those signature verifiers as possible and to have additional people that we can call in if needed.
Okay.
But to not have a single seat empty and to be able to go through that process. But it does, for this Agilis machine, again, it goes literally from handing 15 ballots
Right.
at a time, scanning those 10 to 15, as opposed to having those through our system much quicker. And we'll be able to redirect the people who are currently working on that ballot processing portion and cross-train them to be signature verifiers to then focus more manpower or women power on the signature verification aspect.
Okay, thanks, yeah, it'll be great too. Get it down to tabulation in 2 days, that would be fantastic.
And we'll be doing a lot more runs. Also, that's something that we've recognized that we were doing pickups only every other day and those types of things. And in a 2024 cycle, we'll be increasing the number of processing, and we'll have the number of people. And then for the primary and the general, we'll actually be running 2 shifts of people. So there'll be a morning crew and an afternoon to late evening crew. So we'll have more people physically doing signature verification.
Okay, so there were a couple
just-
items, so on the offer agreement, on page 1 of the offer agreement, there was a couple things.
And just as an FYI, I personally have a hard stop at 11:30. I have to prepare for another meeting at
Okay.
noon. But my chief deputy will still be available
It's
to answer
probably-
questions.
Okay,
We'll probably take
And-
care of it for you, yeah. Yeah.
and I really appreciate you being here today, I truly do.
We all
You know,
do. It's
yeah,
wonderful,
yeah.
and everyone
And
here,
this
it's a
was
great time, too, for everyone to hear from both of you, so thank you.
The digital scan connectivity functionality to the voter registration application. So what is that connection between the Runback solution that we purchased now in Pima County to the voter registration database? There's a logical connection via the network. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Bresney. We will, it's a secure connection from our equipment into our, it's a holding area. When we pull the data, we can pull the data. Nothing is going to run back directly from this equipment. It is in closed network, in a secure network that is firewalled. It is not leaving our facility, and it is not going to run back. It is simply utilized
Right.
within our own, just the same way that we have been using the scanners in the past. It is that same functionality that, and we don't have it directly tied to our voter program. It's, we're able to do a secure upload within our system.
Okay. And it says in 4.2.7 of the offer agreement, what is a download data function for backup signature verification?
Excuse me?
In the offer on the contract itself, paragraph 4.2.7, what exactly is the download data function for backup signature verification?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Bresney. Although I won't go into the technicals on that because election infrastructure is critical infrastructure, but what that entails is should we need to have access to the information that the Agilis scans as a secondary function, just as Recorder Costas Kelly was stating earlier, that download is in a download area on our secured network where we can access to that information, and it is
So
a
you
closed
actually scrub that before anything goes back into the voter registration database? technically, kind of, yeah.
It is a secured, closed network,
Okay.
Commissioner, and the information is downloaded in one area, and we review it before uploading it into another area. That is as much detail as I would feel comfortable giving you on that one.
Okay, and then in paragraph 4.3, it states typical business process flow. So the contract, I guess, is going to provide an automated workflow for the early ballot return process, sorting returned early ballot affidavit envelopes and scanning early ballot affidavits for signature verification. So is this something that Runbeck is providing to the recorder's office, or something that you're developing?
This is the process, Commissioner Bresney, that we have explained in some detail.
Okay.
Again, I think there's a focus on Runbeck's role. Runbeck is delivering a piece of equipment that my office will operate. And they're going to provide us with training and support. And if there's some technical issue, they're going to drive down from Phoenix and come to our facility and fix it for us. So that's what we have. That is what the contract details. As far as that, they are not receiving any of this additional information. We are continuing to use the process that we have been, which goes through that ballot processing piece that I shared earlier. It is simply a scanning feature, and then we have that data. It's available for our offices. It does not go to Runbeck,
Okay.
and Runbeck is not involved with any of our voter file. They're not receiving this information, and it's none of that. We're using this equipment to scan those ballots and to identify ballots that don't have signatures, just at a higher volume. So it's just a larger piece of equipment to our existing process.
Okay, I'm good. This is going to be the last question for her. She has to leave in 3 minutes,
Okay.
so we're going to honor that for her, please.
So my last question then would be,
Or they'll never come back, you know.
part of the packet that went to the Board of Supervisors stated automated signature recognition. And the county purchased this optional software. Will run in the background after incoming scan of ballot envelopes. ASR, automated signature recognition, uses intelligent image recognition to compare the signatures and provide a score based on a user-determined accepted threshold. What does that mean?
So this software that would identify if a ballot, let's say that we are able to upload the sample of a signature, and we through scanning, the Agilis scanner is able to detect whether or not that is somewhat similar to their signature. However, I am extremely uncomfortable with artificial intelligence, and I have absolutely no plans to stop signature verifying every single ballot affidavit will be signature verified by a human being. However, one of the features of that, having that software in place, could identify an unresolved ballot, a ballot that, maybe it's written, maybe it's Thomas Beresny, but the signature actually says Barbara Tellman. That would be something that would alert and be segregated within the equipment much sooner, and we'd be able to look at it and say, oh, clearly, this is not Thomas
Okay.
Beresny's signature.
And so, so I just wanted clarification on that.
Yes,
and-
but
And at no time am I trying to build some conspiracy theory or
Thank
something like,
you.
because that's not my intent.
Thank you.
What I want to see is make sure, and as part of the commission, I think we want to make sure that Pima County doesn't go through the same thing, and it doesn't matter what party affiliation anybody has, because back in 2008, when the EIC was created here, it was a different party that really led the push for the EIC being created. So this is one of those things, they flip over every 5 years, 10 years, and all of this stuff. So it was just, I just want to make sure, and I think a lot of folks here in Pima County would feel the same way. I don't want to see your office or the elections director and the county administration and the board of supervisors go through a bunch, as a taxpayer, I don't want my tax money going to either one of lawsuits to defend, either one of your offices. So I really appreciate your being here today and your frankness and your forthcoming, and this definitely helps. Part of our objective is to ensure the public trust. So this today, what you've done today, ma'am, has helped that.
Yeah.
As far as I'm
On behalf
concerned.
of all of us, thank you.
Thank you.
For being here. We're going to keep Director Hargrove for a little bit longer, if we may. Are we okay?
Thank you. And that's
Make sure
my
you don't
goal
speak
is.
out with her. But we really appreciate it very much. You've answered a lot of questions, and as you know, we'll continue to have questions. But thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today. And, oop, there's my.
There it is.
There's my
I
alarm.
got that same alarm.
But yes, our intention is to continue our process the same way and continue the transparency and integrity that our office cares so deeply about. And again, we do already signature verify every single ballot affidavit as it comes through. We signature verify with a human being, and that will not change. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I show that we have 2 items left. We have your discussion regarding the Secretary of State issues, and we have comments and recommendations of additional vote centers. What is the pleasure of the commission?
Well, I think, for me, on the one with the draft elections procedures manual, going through I read this article, and it just kind of spurred some questions.
Okay.
And because the timeline this has got to go by, the draft EPM has to go through and then be approved, forwarded up
Understand.
by October. So I had a couple questions on timing of the review of the draft. See, Ms. Hargrove, if you have anything, or Ms. Heiser, if you have any information on,
It's a door lock.
on,
I think it locks
on this.
automatically.
and you would be surprised that Tom Berezny reads the Tucson Sentinel.
No surprise. I think you
But,
read a lot of different things, probably.
but,
So what is
I
the
had a-
pleasure of the commission? Shall we do the vote centers first?
We can
Or
do
you
the
want-
vote centers first.
Let's do
That's
that.
fine.
Is that agreeable with everyone? Okay, we're going to take G next, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So as I guess as all of you probably know by now, we're being very meticulous about reviewing vote centers, the locations of the vote centers, the size of the vote centers, access in the vote centers, electrical in the vote centers. So there's a lot going on to evaluate the vote centers that we actually used in the election last year. So, and in doing that, we did have a voter or citizen come forward earlier in the year mentioning that there wasn't a vote center in a specific area. And so we did take a look at those areas, and she was accurate. There weren't any convenient vote centers in those areas. The voter would actually have to drive to the center between 15 minutes minimum to get to the closest vote. and that was out at Dub Mountain. So we went out, we spoke with the facility. The facility did not want to be used during COVID, because I think they have a lot of senior residents there. And so during COVID, they did not want to be used. We went out, we spoke with them. They agreed to be a vote center again, and at no cost to the county, yay. And they have a lot of residents there. So I am recommending actually, because it has to be approved by the board, that we add a vote center at the Highlands at Dub Mountain. So that's the first one that we're going to add. And then we actually looked at the vote center near the University of Arizona, U of A, and realized that the church there was getting a lot of voters. And so the concern is, with the presidential election, would that church and that church parking lot be able to handle and accommodate all the voters that would need to vote? So we determined that maybe not. So we are going to recommend opening a vote center at the foundation, U of A Foundation, Hillel Foundation. I'm pretty sure I'm chopping that up, but Hillel Foundation.
It's Hillel.
It's Hillel, okay. Thank you. And so we are going to recommend opening a vote center at that location. And I know there's concern that we have almost as many vote centers, which we actually don't. It's less than half, as we had precincts, voting precincts. But the recommendations that came forward when these vote centers were opened, the Board of Supervisors wanted to add additional vote centers to specific areas. And so we ended up with 129 vote centers at that time. So hope you can appreciate that. For me, because we started with 129 vote centers, and of course I'm adding the 2, I am uncomfortable closing any vote centers prior to the 2024 election cycle, especially the presidential election cycle, because I know that parties and other groups have this information on their website, so people are beginning to become familiar with the actual locations of these vote centers. And to just randomly move or do away with these vote centers would be more of a detriment, I think, to the voters than a benefit. And so after the 2024 cycle, we're definitely going to look at eliminating vote centers that are not used. If they are within a mile of each other and, they're only getting 100 voters and the other vote center is getting 300, then really there's no need to have a vote center there, because vote centers should accommodate a larger number of people than a precinct. So that's something that we actually will definitely take a look at in the future. But there is an issue that is arising, and I just received a letter from Amphi School District saying that we could no longer use their schools. So because of the current political climate, we're getting schools that no longer want to be polling places because of the security for the children. And so I've lost those 3 vote centers. So I will have to find 3 additional vote centers for those schools. And, I will not be surprised to learn that other schools do not want us being there either. So there's a positive and a negative there. So the positive is the schools require us to be, most of these schools require us to be in their libraries, and the libraries are pretty small, trying to segregate voters from the students. And so, that's the negative. It's a really small place. The positive is we now have the opportunity to find a location that may be better suited for a vote center, although it's going to cost us probably to have a vote center in a different location. So that's where we are with vote centers. I did want to, Madam Vice Chair, if you don't mind, address a couple of statements that were made earlier about vote centers. Sure. So there was a comment made about an individual being a judge at a vote center, and some things that were said that cannot be accurate. Obviously, there was not a inspector or marshal or anyone that worked at the vote center that was there until midnight, election night. We had all of our ballots. You did not. You said 2 a.m. I apologize. So.
I didn't say the inspector was there until 2 a.m. I said that I had heard that there was a person.
Comment,
yeah.
it's kind of her to
Yeah, so.
do that, but
Yes, ma'am. So, so I just want to state that that's not accurate. We had all the ballots in our possession way before 2 a.m. So there would be no reason for anyone to be at a vote center because they have to turn in all the paperwork at the same time. So just to make sure that we're not just stating things that we hear that are not accurate, because that doesn't help with voter confidence at all. And it would be very helpful to myself and my staff to know which vote center had the equipment problem for 3 hours and was missing 3 pieces of equipment, of the equipment. I'm very curious to find out which vote center that was and what pieces were actually missing. It is not helpful to us, of course, if we do not get that information, because then we cannot backtrack and find out what's going on with that. And so training, chain of custody, all of those things we're actually taking a look at. We're revisiting, we're working on it. Training's coming. Training is being revised all the time. So those concerns that poll workers had from the last election are being addressed and have been addressed. So, as we move forward. And I did just release my last quarterly report to the county administrator, which I did outline some of the things that we've already addressed from the last election. So that's where we are with vote centers.
okay. So we'll end up with 131 or 132 at the most at this point.
Yes, ma'am. That is my hope.
But, right. Well,
Yes. So commissioners, we are losing 3, but we will have to replace those because they are in critical places in the county that do not have other vote centers. So we will have to replace those.
Yes,
I do
ma'am.
have a question.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Director Hargrove, I was aware of the Rancho Vistoso area up in Oro Valley, Sun City, more of another senior community. There was a lack of voting centers in a reasonable distance that didn't require any travel. Did you look at that area, and what did you determine in regards to the needs for that community?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Caswell. Yes, we did. The best locations for vote centers were schools, and they were not having us. So we could not find a location near Sun City, nearer than the one that we have there, because the only option was to put it in a school, and the school did not want to have us there.
Has that been resolved at all or changed? Has that situation changed at all? Any new locations in that area been brought forward to you or anything?
Commissioner Caswell, no. So the Tangerine Road and Sun City area, no, they have not.
Any other questions, comments? The Oro Valley
I'll just
one
make
is
a
still
comment. Just,
there.
It's hard not seeing the schools do that, because when I started voting in the 70s, our precincts were located in our elementary school gyms.
They were.
In our neighborhood. And no one ever had a problem.
Yeah.
And so it's not very comforting.
Right, it's the safety of the children, I'm assuming is the problem. They're concerned about the safety of the children.
Yes, ma'am, that is the concern.
Okay, anything more for you, or any questions?
Thank you, I appreciate the care that they're taking with trying to properly locate places.
I know,
It's
it's
hard.
always an issue, isn't it? Always an issue. Okay, so we now have item E. And that would be Commissioner Brezhnev.
Yeah,
And
so I
we
read
have the board and the pen and the.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So I read this article back in the last week of June and found it rather interesting. And I think my first question is, and hopefully you've both had a chance to read it. It was provided in our packet. It says, just basically, what was your overall impression so far of this? And this goes to both the Recorder's Office and the Elections Department. It's just your overall view of what the Secretary of State, and I believe he has a working group that the Recorder is part of, correct? On the CPM, I mean, can you give an overall? I mean, have you provided comments to the draft so far? Can we look at those?
Do rock, paper, scissors on who goes first? I'll speak on behalf of the Recorder's Office. We have been actively involved in the draft of the EPM. What the Secretary of State's office has explained to us and what we have been doing as participation, they have stripped the manual back to the 2014 version of the Elections Procedures Manual. They wanted to start as fresh as possible based off of what the Secretary of State has indicated to be just the statutory authorities of the recorder or elections officer in charge of elections. So that covers both of our departments. And the way that has worked is that we have been going piecemeal through the EPM. We've covered multiple chapters in chunks. We had our last meeting with the Secretary of State's office. This is where all of the recorders in the state and all of the elections directors in the state have a meeting with the Recorder's Office where we do provide feedback and go over the recommended changes that the Secretary of State is providing, and then any questions that or areas of concern or areas that recorders or elections directors feel need to be clarified within the proposed EPM. We finished that process it was Monday, wasn't it? Tuesday. So it was Tuesday. We finished through the entire EPM. The last amount of information that they'll be sending to us will be the appendices to the EPM for us to review. And then we will have ongoing communications with the Secretary of State's office for any additional questions that we have or recommendations to the EPM. For the Pima County Recorder's Office, we have provided feedback in some areas of the EPM with questions regarding the removal of certain items that we found to be helpful from the 2019 EPM to questions requesting that the appropriate statutes be referenced, any particular case law, things like that. Yeah. The Secretary of State's office has very amenable to that. The elections director for the Secretary of State is an attorney by training, so I think she really enjoys putting in those footnotes as it relates to statute and case law. So we will have those references, which we rely on to be able to go back and support the functions that the EPM kind of does in detail, and then references back to the statutes that authorize that. So I think that we were a little unsure of the process when it first started, but they have been very productive meetings. They have provided us an opportunity to give our feedback, both written and oral in meetings, and it has been productive in the fact that particularly for counties such as Pima, Maricopa, and Pinal, we all seem to focus on some of the same things, and we all bring up some of the same issues. So it's nice to know that we're on the same page as our counties of similar size and jurisdiction. And I will turn it over to Director Hartgrove.
Ms. Heiser did a great job, and I think she said everything that needs to be said.
I apparently won the rock, paper, scissors.
For that question, huh? Okay.
I have a question though about the proposed date, when it will be made public and when there will be public hearings.
Right. I had that same question too, Commissioner Tillman. Yeah.
Commissioner Tillman, the Secretary of State should have that posted on their website.
Ready?
I mean, the dates, I mean, whatever information about the process is completely in their hands, and so it should be posted on their website at some point. I know they want to have, by August the, what's the date, 2nd or?
Something like that.
4th or something like that?
Sometime early in August, they're hoping to have the full EPM with all of the inclusions of the county's recommendations formatted for review. And I think, and again, as Director Hargrove mentioned, this is the timeline of the Secretary of State's office. We have no control over it.
Sure.
I do believe that their intention is to have the proposed EPM in full sometime in early August to start the public comment on that. And then with that information and inclusion, it will go to the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office for finalization. But even throughout that process, should Pima County, on either the election side of the House or the recording side of the House, when we review the EPM, should we have additional questions or comments or clarifications, the Secretary of State's office has been very amenable to our input.
Good.
So they are always willing to listen to what we have to say and provide clarification.
Okay, so you answered a bunch of my questions all right there. So there's an item in the article, and it says county recorders would no longer be told how exactly to compare voter signatures when deciding which mail-in ballots to accept, for example. So we're getting rid of that standard statewide signature verification process. Do I read that like that? Because I heard earlier today, we have a state-funded.
I guess I came wrong. 3102 for the food handlers here.
I think we'll be wrapping up at about noon, and
Yeah.
obviously the other group will come in.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, this is a different meeting.
So sorry, thank you.
But
Thank you.
we have a
Sorry, one more
Secretary of State provided contractor that does the signature forensic training. So I'm seeing in one place in documents coming out of the state of Arizona saying we're not going to have any kind of a standard signature verification thing. But then in another part of what I heard today was we do have a standard with a contractor doing the training. So which one is it?
So I can't speak for Secretary Fontes. I'll just say I can't speak for the Secretary. For signature verification, as it has always been understood by the recorders who are responsible for signature verification of early ballots, and this is an understanding statewide with my peers, is that their requirement is that the county recorder is to receive a ballot, and the county recorder is to have a signature verification and do signature verification on that. At no point in time has the Secretary of State given us a specific standard of this is what you do. The forensic signature training that the Secretary of State provides us through their contractor and who the other counties also use. It is the same person that the other counties use. That is for the fundamentals of what signature verification is. So it's a broad brush training to get everyone to understand what you're looking for in terms of signature verification and identifying particular trends as it relates to the signatures. Is it a spurious forgery? Is it a genuine signature? If so, if it's a genuine signature, what are the broad characteristics of the signature versus the local characteristics of the signature? All of those types of tools and techniques are presented in that training at this state by that provider. And then in the signature verification training that we do here locally, we not only review all of the information that that forensic signature expert provides in those trainings, the guide, and I'll refer you again to the information we provided to the commission. That reference guide is based off of a general reference guide that former Secretary Hobbs's office put out in 2021 based off of information that was gained from multiple states who also do signature verification. And then we took that guide and we supplemented it with our own information and the specialized trainings that former Chief Deputy Chris Rhodes used to provide to the Recorder's Office as an informational guide only. Okay. So the state has actually never defined what it is, the standard for signature verification. It's not defined in statute either, and it was never defined in the previous EPMs.
Okay.
So this is just the process that we have developed to try to make it as clear and as transparent for our constituents and for our staff. So.
Okay, and just, I guess just one final question. So in the article, it mentioned that.
You're not leaving this time. We have to be out of here in about 4 minutes. and
Okay.
We have to talk about future agenda items too.
And Madam Vice Chair, it just, August the 1st is when they plan to post the EPM for public comment.
When's?
August the 1st.
August 1st?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about all this. There's another meeting scheduled in 3 or 4 minutes. So we appreciate everybody's patience and everybody being here. Our next meeting date is August 18th. And do you have other topics that will continue to the next meeting, or?
Not at the current time. I'll make
Not at
sure
the current
I
time.
present my stuff to Vanessa.
Re-precincting, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's coming up.
Anything else that we can be sure about? All right. We'll get that information on. Thank you. A lot of information, a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, and once
A lot
again,
of
thank you
input.
both
Everybody. It's
for
been very interesting.
the clarifications.
Please take all your paper with you, so